So welcome everybody. As I said, my name is Kim Ramsdale. I'm an organiser in aged care with the QNMU. We have a few other organisers with aged care facilities online tonight as well. I'd like to start by acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging and paying my respects to the traditional custodians on the land to which we are all gathered today. I would like to pay my respect to their elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders here today. Also paying respect to your elders, past, present and emerging. We also have a statement of respect and safety. The QNMU is committed to ensuring all gatherings, including meetings, functions and events, are free from all form of harassment, discrimination and racism. Attendees have the right to be safe and respected, and ask that all attendees act in accordance to these values. If you have any concerns, please raise them with the convener of the meeting, which would be me. You can email me, or you can pop something in the chat, or you can contact me tomorrow if you've got any issues that you're concerned about. So, what we're doing here tonight is we've called the meeting mainly because the QNMU has been hearing from ENs in aged care about a lot of concerns around their jobs, their stability in their jobs and what they're being asked to do, and concerns around the care hours. So we'd like to hear from you tonight about what the issues are. We want to make sure you realise that the QNMU is aware that there are issues for ENs in aged care, and we do want to hear from you. And we want to also talk about what we're doing. So what we're doing as the QNMU, what the ANMF is doing, that's the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Federation, which is the national body. So they're doing some things as well. And also a little chat about what we can do industrially to help you. And then I'm going to have a chat with you about what you can do as a collective. So you're a big force. We have 1,600 ENs in aged care in Queensland. So you're a massive force. So there is an opportunity here to band together to do something to safeguard your positions and to take some action around the skill mix in aged care and stability. So I have online Daniel Prentice, who is our Professional Research Officer and Professional Officer. Dan's going to talk about what the ANMF is doing and what the QNMU can do for ENs in aged care. And he's going to talk about the survey that the ANMF is putting out. And then we have Courtney Travaskis, who is our industrial officer, and she's going to have a bit of a chat about what we can do industrially to assist you. And then after that, I'm going to have a talk about what you can do as a collective. So I'd like to introduce Dan to speak first. Over to you, Dan.
Thanks, Kim. Evening, everyone. Yes, and look, thanks for taking the time to join us. And as Kim indicated, this is an issue that is concerning us, and we'd like to hear from you in particular what is happening. And I'll tell you why in a tick. But as Kim said, enrolled nurses are a very important group, both within aged care and healthcare. And just some background information to reiterate how important you are. Enrolled nurses are about 21% of the nursing number of nurses in Australia. So there's about 72,000 of you. A really important part of both the aged and health sectors. About half work in public, about half work in private. But one of the things that's been a long-term and concerning trend, which has kind of ended up in some ways where we are tonight, is that over time, the nursing component in aged care has gone down. There's been an overall declining trend. So if you look at the figures, back in 2003, there was about 21.4% RNs in the aged care workforce and about 14.4% enrolled nurses. By about 2020, that had decreased to a bit over 15% RNs and just under 8% enrolled nurses. So overall, it's gone from about 35% down to about 23%. And both RNs and ENs have declined over that time. So that's a long-term decline, but we seem to have, because of some of the recent changes that have happened in aged care, particularly around funding and minutes of care, etc., it's highlighted to us a range of issues, and hence our meeting with you tonight. Probably a couple of other important things to remember is that the EN role isn't simply a transition to the RN role. ENs and those who are ENs and choose to stay ENs are a really important part of the system, and we need to support them and encourage them. And so that might be some of you, but we certainly acknowledge the contribution that you make to making the system work, I think. So what's happened lately? Well, one of the things that's been getting around, particularly as the way we fund aged care has changed over from the old ACFI system to the ANAC system, and particularly now that mandated our minutes of care and mandated RN minutes of care are coming into play in October, and we now have the RN 24/7 from the 1st of July, is that ENs some of the time, in some cases, have been told that the system doesn't fund them anymore. So the first thing to put to bed is that, yes, you are. And what I've done is, for anybody who's interested, I've put up a link to the guidance that the Commonwealth Department of Health puts out. Enrolled nurses are well and truly acknowledged in that document as being both important for the care of those in the aged care sector, but most importantly, are funded within the funding model. So if any of your employers try and tell you that they aren't getting funding for your role, tell them they're dreaming and refer them to that document there. And so, you know, that's probably the first thing to put to bed, because our members are hearing this, and some of our members have relayed that information to us. So it is concerning. That's real misinformation. At the moment, though, unlike the mandated minutes of care, so 200 minutes of overall care and 40 minutes of RN care time per 24 hours that are mandated and due to come into effect on October, I think the one thing missing there is acknowledgement specifically of the EN component of care. At the moment, it's not mandated. And so the EN minutes of care are packaged up with that 160 minutes that's left over from the 40 minutes of RN care and combined with other direct care providers such as assistants in nursing and personal care workers. There's no explicit, you must have so many minutes of enrolled nurse time. And when there's a solution to that, it's going to have to take into account that some aged care providers simply don't employ enrolled nurses. So whatever comes out of our concerns will need to address the particular needs of each site and each facility. So what have we been hearing from our EN members? Well, some are telling us that because of these changes that have been brought in, which are for the better, that their employers aren't going to employ any more enrolled nurses. They're going to keep the ones they are, but if they leave, they're not going to employ any more. Some say that there's potential for redundancies, which is awful. And some are suggesting that enrolled nurses will be offered carer positions, all of which are just awful outcomes. And we want to hear back from you today about what your experience has been in your own workplace. Hopefully some of you will be able to tell us that your employers are saying, look, yeah, we love ANs and we want more and all that sort of stuff, but we're being really bombarded with a bit of negativity at the moment, which if it's worrying us, it's probably worrying you. One of the things, so we're hearing a lot of this from our members, but the only way that we're going to get some good, solid Australia-wide data is through the survey that Kim mentioned. Now, there's a link up in the chat on this tonight, as well as it's just gone out with the Q News, which we regularly send out. So please look at either of those links. We'll probably be putting it up on social media as well, so our QNMU social media. I think, and there'll be reminders sent out as well. So I guess the message there is fill that in, encourage your colleagues to fill it in. They don't have to be QNMU members to do that, but it is really important that we get a Queensland and national perspective on what's happening to people out there in the enrolled nurse space. And it is largely directed at enrolled nurses, that survey. So it's for you, about you. It's not just enrolled nurses that we want to fill it in. We want everybody to fill it in because, you know, the impacts on the people that you work with, if enrolled nurses numbers go down in aged care, is going to be considerable either way that you look at it. So what's happening, as I said, and as Kim mentioned, the state branches of the ANMF, ourselves and other state branches like the New South Wales Nurses and Midwives Association are very concerned about these trends that we're hearing about. And that's certainly been discussed at a national level with the National Office of the ANMF to look at, well, what is the best process for making sure that we don't get a decline in enrolled nurse numbers in aged care? And in fact, there's processes put in place to encourage the employment of this really important part of the nursing component of aged care. So stay tuned for that one. There has been a little bit of help from the federal government in the recent past. Earlier this year, you might have heard that that Southern Cross Care in Tasmania was going to change its model care quite a lot, and in the process was going to shed its enrolled nurse positions. And the government came out with a campaign, a media campaign, to name and shame, and we believe that some of those decisions have been reversed, but that can't happen on every time we hear about this. So there needs to be something a little bit more solid done. I wish I could give you an idea of what that might be, but I think that will be shaped a little bit by that information that we get from our membership about the situation on the ground across Queensland and across Australia. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. I'll hand back to Kim, I think.
Thank you, Dan. And we'll take some questions at the end because I can see there's quite a few questions in the chat and I'm sure there'll be some more questions. So in the meantime, I'd like to introduce Courtney Trebakis. I said that right, Courtney? I don't say it often enough.
Travaskis.
Travaskis. I should know that. She's our industrial officer and she's going to have a bit of a chat about what we're doing industrially to assist ENs. Thank you, Courtney.
Okay, thanks everyone. Yeah, so as Kim said, I'm an industrial officer, which is essentially the role at the QNMU. We look after, or we coordinate enterprise bargaining, and also we look after some other collective issues to do with collective disputes and that kind of thing. Anything that affects more than one or a group of employees, as well as, yeah, obviously that bargaining is quite a big piece of it at the moment. So we've got a couple of strategies that we've implemented so far to try and stop. So in my view, it's, well, I think you'd all agree as well, it's definitely preferable to try and stop an employer from thinking about this or acting on, you know, an idea that they should be reducing dependence on ENs or reducing EN hours. And so we've kind of put together a couple of strategies for that kind of proactive approach. The first is to use what we normally would use to affect change in aged care, and that is through enterprise bargaining. There's quite a lot of bargaining happening at the moment. We're bargaining with Bolton Clark, with Blue Care for the nurses, Lutheran Services, Opal, Mercy, and quite a lot of smaller providers. And we have reason to believe that bargaining is going to pick up for the other big providers in the next year as well. So what we've been seeking recently in these recent bargains is for a clause in the enterprise agreement to basically state that, the employer will not reduce EN numbers, will not reduce the hours of ENs, and will not basically de-skill the workforce, which is what they are doing when they're saying, look, from now on, you're going to be doing care work. We're going to call you a personal care team leader or whatever it is they're doing. They're essentially de-skilling their workforce, which is something that we need staff to work together to make that a deal breaker in any enterprise agreement. We've got a bit of power in bargaining at the moment because the employer really is motivated to get agreement from you. So last year, there was new legislation introduced by the federal government that will change the way bargaining works in aged care. So you will have heard on the news, multi-employer bargaining becoming, more of an option for employees, especially employees who work in aged care and similar industries. So that's industries where it's been the pay has historically been quite low. The bargaining power has not been very strong. The employer wants to protect itself from what that means for them. And that's why we're seeing so many providers, Bolton Clark, Lutheran Services, or Bolton Clark and Blue Care, Opal and Mercy haven't bargained in a long time. And they're coming to the table now because they want you to agree to a single enterprise agreement. So you have more power to say, well, I won't agree to it unless you agree to this. And they're motivated to get that over the line. So we see that's a real option as well. And in all of these, for the logs of claims we're putting forward, but most of these bargains are in their early stages at the moment. So some of them, we're just putting together the log of claims now. Some they've just been presented to the employer, but we've got a claim in each of them to protect current EN numbers, to make sure that those EN, the number of ENs and the hours that you work can't be reduced for the life of the agreement. Now, as with all enterprise bargaining, how far we get on that claim is going to depend on how organized the employees are. This can work really well when everybody's working together and, everybody's focused on a common goal. In this case, I think, especially for cases like with Blue Care, it's just a nursing agreement. And we know that, it might not be felt as intensely, but the registered nurses we've spoken to are all just as outraged as, as you guys with what is happening in some of these centres, and they'll support you. They don't want to have to work in a facility where there aren't any ENs. You guys help each other do each other's, you make the centre work by working together. So that is a real option for us, is to try and stop the employer from doing this proactively through enterprise bargaining. There are some downsides to that strategy. Obviously, it means, if your employer agrees to this, you need to agree to this single enterprise agreement, which will go for 3 years. The other downside is that we're not necessarily bargaining everywhere. For instance, I've seen Churches of Christ, a question come up from there. We're not bargaining with Churches of Christ at the moment. But we do have another strategy that we're hoping will catch some of these other providers, the ones that aren't bargaining, as well as some of the smaller ones. And that is to do with the new labour agreements that have just come in. And I hope I don't lose you all here, because it is a bit of a complicated issue. But essentially, because there is such a big workforce shortage at the moment in Australia for personal carers and AINs in aged care, the federal government has come up with this new way for allowing employers to bring in overseas workers to fill that shortage. So overseas personal carers and AINs. with certificate 3s. And in order for the employer to be able to get permission from the government to do this, they need to speak to the union and we need to agree. We need to endorse their application, essentially. And what we've done pretty successfully so far is to say, we will not endorse your application unless you sign a memorandum of understanding, which is a binding document that says you will not reduce the number of hours of enrolled nurse hours or the number of enrolled nurses throughout the life of the memorandum of understanding. And those last for, I think it's 5 years. So it's very new. It's only been in place for a couple of months and there's been a lot else going on with the 15% pay increase and that. So we've been working away behind the scenes, but we haven't got an MOU ready to be signed yet. We are getting close. We're in negotiations at the moment with Auscare and Vicenti and Opal. And there's a few more employers who have contacted us saying, there's 14, or actually I think it's more like 18 now, who we're in conversations with, but those are the big ones. And there's more, I'm sure, who will come forward. Oh, sorry, also Arcare have contacted us as well. So that's another way. It's a bit of an indirect way, but it is quite potent because these employers really want to be able to fix their workforce shortage. They want to be able to stay open and make sure there's enough carers to staff the floor. You know, I'm sure that most of the staff want that as well. But what we need to ensure before we give any kind of endorsement to the federal government is that they're not de-skilling their workforce by stealth by removing enrolled nurses. So those are the two kind of strategies for that kind of more proactive approach, I suppose, to stopping employers before they even think about it. As part of those MOU discussions, we're also pursuing, it's a line that says the employer has not and will not reduce enrolled nurse hours. So it's got a bit of a retrospective, potentially, application as well. But I'm not sure how that's going to go. But we're working on that to make sure they don't, we can sort of get in front of it a little bit industrially.
Thank you very much, Courtney. So now I want to have a quick chat about what you can do as a group and as a collective. You are a very big, strong group. So if you decide that you're willing to stand up and work together, there's a lot you can do. So a couple of the things that you can do is we can start identifying who's willing to do a delegation to their local parliamentarian, who's willing to talk to the media, and are you willing as a group to set up a statewide branch? So I'm going to have a little bit of a chat about what a branch is. So the QNMU is a democratic organisation where members are actively encouraged to get involved in union activities. The policies and the activities of the union is determined by the members, and by the members, they do that through their branch. So you can form a branch, a local branch at your site, or a geographical branch, or you can have a specialised branch. And I would be suggesting that you would be a specialised branch because you have something in common that you are all have a specialised interest in, and you need to have a voice. ENs have not got enough voice at the moment. So if you were to decide to form a branch, there's 1,600 of you altogether, so you would be entitled to have 9 delegates and 4 alternate delegates. So what happens with delegates is they come to annual conference once a year. So we have 1 year we have conference online, and the other year we have it in person in Brisbane. And if you're a rural member, we pay for you to come down to Brisbane. We pay your accommodation and your food to come down to conference every second year. And then the branches put promotions to conference. So you would develop, at your branch meetings, you would develop a motion. and you might decide to develop a motion. For example, you might say that we want the QNMU to advocate and apply political pressure to have ENs incorporated into the mandatory care hours. So that's something a branch could take to conference. All the branches vote on it. If they vote yes, that then becomes an instruction to the QNMU to say, this is what we want you to concentrate on for the next year. And you could have a number of motions relating specifically for ENs in aged care. And then if they get voted up, that's your instructions to the QNMU for the next year. So the other thing branches do, you could meet monthly or bi-monthly. Being a statewide branch, we would do that online, similar to this meeting. We could also do a hybrid model where if we had a lot of SEQ members, we could meet at QNMU and then have the rural members online. And anyone, so all 1,600 ENs are entitled to attend a branch meeting. You don't have to be a delegate, but the delegates attend and you discuss issues around ENs in aged care. And then you can make a resolution to do something. So you all get together, you have a discussion about what the issues are, and then you decide, well, this is what we're going to do about it. And they're also a great communication tool between your organiser and you and the QNMU as a whole. So we get to hear what the issues are, and we can then make sure the QNMU is aware. Otherwise, sometimes we don't hear about what the issues are. The other thing that some of the branches do is they have keynote speakers at their meetings. So you could have CPD points allocated to you from your meetings. So some of the things I was thinking of that you might have an interest in that we could have keynote speakers is EN scope of practice, VAD, delegation pathways, resume writing, understanding your EBs, professional culpability, wellbeing, conscientious objections, dementia care. The list is endless. So, you know, we could arrange each meeting to have a half-hour CPD keynote speaker. The QNMU now has 2 nurse educators. So if there's an area of interest to the group, we can utilise their expertise as well. So what I wanted to see today is, do you as a group want to set up a statewide branch of aged care ENs? So you could maybe give me a thumbs up if that's something you think you'd be interested in. Yes, 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 yes. Great. So what the process is at a meeting like this, because we're nowhere near election time, you can actually just nominate to be a delegate or an alternate delegate, and we can appoint you. It has to be approved by council. All branches need to be approved by council, but I can guarantee council would be welcoming and encouraging a statewide EN branch. So what we need to do now is to find out who would like to be a delegate, or if you would like to be an alternate delegate. So delegates would come to conference each year. If a delegate was unable to attend conference, then an alternate delegate could go. And there's a lot of protections around being a delegate or alternate delegate in the branch as well, industrially. So for those who decide to put their hands up tonight, we will send you a booklet, our branch handbook, so that you could have a look and see exactly what it entails. And we also do training. So we give you full training, delegate training. It's 2 days. And in most of your EBs, there will be industrial relations training leave. I think most EBs in aged care have either 3 or 5 days. So you will actually get paid by your employer to come and do the training. You'll get the days off paid by your employer. We give it to you for free. If you need to travel, and I think it's more than 100 kilometres, we put you up here in Brisbane. Or sometimes we come out and do the training in some of the rural areas as well. There we go. Leg has the training calendar up there. Did you want to have a quick word about that, Leg, to tell them about what the training involves?
Thanks,
This is
Kim.
our
Yes.
educator.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, I'm the educator here at QNMU, and I'm just thinking, oh, I could do a lot of shameless plugs here while I've got a captive audience, but Kim's doing a great job. And she's correct that if you are wanting to get more involved, as Courtney advised and as Kim said, we have a range of education courses. We've got our brochure out for July through to December. Most of our workplace reps courses are done in all the regional towns. So all of the Townsville, Rocky, Mackay, Cairns, Sunshine Coast, Toowoomba, etc. We can provide that to you. Go onto the website and it's there in full under the Education and Events tab. And I just wanted to quickly say that the workplace, there's two areas of training that I think is fantastic. If you're looking at wanting to start your own branch, we've got a course that's called the Building Blocks of QNMU, which is delegate training, and it tells you what that branch, how to make up a branch, the powers that you have, the items, the discussions that you can do, the pros and the protocols of holding a branch meeting, and exactly where that branch sits within the structure of QNMU. And then the other one is the workplace representative course. So if you want to get more involved, it's a 2-day course that gives you all the skills and knowledge to be able to be a workplace rep in your branch and be able to be a great representative for the members that you're representing. And lastly, I just want to give a shameless plug to our meeting of delegates as well. That even though it's a meeting, we call it MODS, meeting of delegates, but it's a member summit this time, and it's a full day, and it's a full 6 or 7 hours of CPD that'll be accredited to you. We've got some fantastic guest speakers coming, Liz Ellis or Jana Pittman. We're wanting to get a big aged care presence there to be able to. We have a half day of education there that is looking at solving local issues. And this would be a great opportunity for you to be able to start that planning about what are we going to do to make sure that your employer is ensuring that the ENs and AINs are respected at work. So have a look on the website, contact Kim if you want further details. But thanks, Kim. Back to you.
Thank you so much. So I have had a few people pop their names up to be delegates. So we officially are applying to be EN statewide branch. So I'm just going to read out the names that I've got and just make sure I haven't missed anybody. So I've got Peter Lithell, Belinda Nugent, and TS, who I will work out who that is. Is there anyone else that would like to pop their hands up to be a delegate or alternate delegate? They don't need to be in each region. They can be anywhere in the state. You will be a statewide branch. So Julie, I see your hands up. I just need to unmute.
Yes.
You're putting your hand up?
Yes.
What's your last name, Julie?
Knapton, Knapton.
Great, thank you. Tina, I think I got you. Yes, Tina Bridge, I got you. I see that your time is limited. It won't take a lot of time. I'm expecting we'll have a discussion and see whether you want to meet monthly or bi-monthly. Often the statewide ones choose to meet bi-monthly, and it doesn't take a lot of time, but once a year you will be coming together for conference. You can have up to 9 delegates and 4 alternate delegates. So we still have room for 4 more delegates. And then Kat, thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
Someone's just mentioned that you do need to be a member of the QNMU to be delegate, but I'm aware that everybody online now is in the QNMU. And I think you need to have been in the QNMU for 3 months. I think that's right. Dan, did you have something?
I just wanted to add in just a quick what you can do stuff as well. So Kim's dealt with, the really important, let's get you power of numbers, so to speak, by a branch. But just to reiterate, fill in that survey, encourage your colleagues to fill it in as well. The other thing is sign up new colleagues. If you've got enrolled nurses working with you, carers, RNs, aged care needs more of our members, so we can, the more members we have, the more strength in the workplace that we have. So please do that. I know it's not easy, but if you're really having a hard time of it at your facility, consider your options. You know, vote with your feet. I know that's not always easy. You've got long service leave and things like that you may need to be consider, but you know, also considering the impacts on your health, both physical and mental, when you're in a very stressful work environment, isn't helping you either. And if you have any problems in your work environment, please give us a call. We may be able to help. And the other thing is that, apart from tonight, keep telling us what's happening. We want to hear your stories so that we know what's going on out there. You know, when we're talking to politicians, it's a lot more effective when we say, look, this is a quote from one of our members about how hard it is out there being an enrolled nurse, you know, word for word, than it is saying, well, look, 56% of our enrolled nurses say this. So that personal information about what your work is like is really important. And just to reiterate what Kim said, I know it's looking at the comments there, there's a fair bit about medications. That's certainly something that we can address in these kind of forums, not tonight, but that's a big issue. It's something that concerns us, and it obviously is something that is important to you. So that's certainly something that we can do about. And I think the other issue is, particularly of those of you who have been offered or may be considering taking up a carer position, is that scope of practice and recency of practice issues, and some of the pluses and minuses, so to speak, that might be in that. So we could give you some advice so that you can make an informed decision about what it is that you do. So that's really all I wanted to add to what Kim was saying.
Thanks, Dan. And we're going to take some questions shortly. But I'll just say I did get contacted by one of my other organisers who was telling me that for anyone in the Westmoreton area, if you are looking outside aged care, there is a couple of really good EN positions. They're quite desperate for ENs and this is public sector. And if you were to email me, I'm happy to send you the links to those applications. So, question, we do have enough people now that have put their hand up to be a branch. I will make a contact list of everybody who's online, and I will send you an email with some information around the formation of the branch, when the branches will be meeting, and I'll make sure everybody gets a link, whatever the branch decides, whether they're monthly or bi-monthly meetings. We'll send you a link. You'll get an invitation to the meetings each time, and notification if we do have a keynote speaker. We'll let you know that there's a keynote speaker. Whenever we do have a keynote speaker, you will get CPD points for that, and they will go directly onto your CPD portal on the QNMU portal page. The other thing I might mention is we have been representing a few ENs that have been treated especially badly. So if you have found that what your employer is doing is significantly unfair and you are very concerned, for example, they are changing your job without your permission, you can put a request for representation in, and we can represent you on an individual basis. We have Sam online, who is one of our servicing. I'm not sure what your title is now, Sam, but did you want to have a quick mention about what would what the criteria would be to put an RFR in?
Sure. Thank you. I'm the member services coordinator, one of the member services coordinators in the servicing team. So we deal with individual matters. So some of those ones you referred to who were having their job titles changed, Courtney dealt with a lot of those in the first instance. And so we dealt with the individuals who had specific circumstances that arose through that. But if you are having individual issues in your workplace that aren't directly related to what we've been discussing tonight, the best port of call in the first instance is to call Member Connect. They'll be able to give you some really good advice over the phone or via email. And if they're not able to answer your question or assist you, they'll then give you the link and the information around putting in a request for presentation so you can get allocated to one of our servicing industrial officers or our servicing organisers who'll be able to assist you with your individual matters.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Kim.
So we'll go through a few of the questions. I don't think we'll get through them all. I've put my email in the chat. So if you wanted to have a think about whether you wanted to be a branch delegate or alternate delegate, you want to have a think overnight, you can send me an email and nominate or just have a chat with me about it. If you have any other serious concerns, you can send me an email. I'll either respond to it or I'll put it on to your organiser, your normal organiser, or I may refer it on to our professional or industrial officers. So please feel free to send me an email. So one of the questions we've got here would be for you, Courtney, is can our contracts be terminated without redundancy payments on October the 1st?
That's generally no, but it depends on the kind of employment you have. If you're permanent, so for casuals, if your employment is casual, it's not really guaranteed ongoing, regardless of what else is going on. So casuals, probably the answer there is yes, but there's also a few caveats there. For permanent staff, if you're on a permanent part-time basis, that is, you're not temporary and you're not casual, you're either part-time or full-time, they can't terminate your contracts without, terminating your contract is essentially sacking you. And we haven't heard of anybody doing that. What would generally be the case if it's October 1, it would be that they're making you redundant. And in that case, you'd be entitled to a redundancy. But we'd really need to have a look at the circumstances of each case. Broadly, the redundancy provisions would cover anybody in that situation if it's that the job's not doesn't need to be performed anymore because they're getting rid of all the ends all at once. But I don't think that's going to happen. I haven't heard of that being, mentioned as being on the horizon or anything. So I wouldn't, I don't want to sort of talk about it too much if it's not something that people have either, have heard is going to happen or if it's actually happened. But essentially, the redundancy provisions are there. They're in the National Employment Standards, which is the minimum terms and conditions of employment in the Fair Work Act, and they apply to permanent staff who've been working at an employer for more than a year, and they apply in circumstances where the job doesn't exist anymore, essentially. So yes, if anybody gets wind that something like that is going to happen, you'll need to contact us immediately because there's a lot we can do around that. But yes, as I said before, I don't think that's, I haven't heard of that occurring. It's not like the funding's going to drop off a cliff, as Dan said, the funding's ongoing.
Thanks, Courtney. However, if they're changing your job title and making you work as a PC and just changing the name, that is also something that we'd like to hear about as well. And Dan, I think you wanted to say something about that as well.
Yeah, just to mention, Kim, that come the 1st of October, each resident will be required to be given an average of 200 minutes of care. So I suspect, I don't know for sure because it's hard to get some information at times, but there's probably still providers out there who still haven't met that 200 minutes of care. So I doubt very much if they'll be letting, terminating your employment in a situation where they need to be able to demonstrate that they are providing that required level of care. So I think what seems to be happening is, again, it's simply not employing more enrolled nurses or more likely changing your designation to some kind of carer. So that will still keep those 200 minutes of, allow them to tick that off. But I don't think that, given that it's so, there's big deficits of, big workforce shortages in aged care already. Now, that doesn't mean that aged care providers won't do insane things because shoot themselves in their foot, so to speak, with their own staffing. But I think most of them would be looking at making sure that they meet those requirements. And so it'd be unlikely, I think, that they would be making you redundant. I think it's much more likely that you might be, you might encounter that, oh, we want to pay you as a PC these days or whatever.
And the other issue, I think, for a lot of ENs is if they, some employers are sort of downgrading your job and saying you're working as a PC now, but we'll maintain your pay level. There's an issue there with your recency of practice. So we want you to be able to work to your full scope of practice. We want you to be able to tick that box on your registration every year to say that you're competent and you have recency of practice. I don't think you would lose your registration over it, but there might be, you might struggle to, if you were audited, to prove your recency of practice. And we're not sure, we're looking into that. But either way, we don't want you working as PCs. We want you working to your full scope of practice. So that's something that we're very keen to see. And I can see there's a lot of chat around these medication competent PCs and the concerns a lot of you have around that. And I've noted that some people are saying their medication incidents are increasing. I'm interested to know whether that is being reported. Do you feel comfortable reporting if you've noticed that there's an increase in medication incidents with MedComp PCs giving out medications? Does anyone have a comment on that? I'm happy to chat offline if anybody wants to have a chat around that.
Are you asking if we're happy to report to?
Yeah, do you feel confident to report, and do you feel like anything, like any action gets taken when you report medication incidents?
I think that not necessarily the actions that should be taken, but the appearance of an action being taken, if that makes sense.
Right, so they cover themselves with a bit of documentation and paperwork, but nothing changes.
Correct.
Yeah. Julie?
Hi, Kim.
Yeah, it's exactly the same where we are.
Yeah.
Where we are, they don't want to know about it. They just put it under the table. If any medication incidents, they just shove it under the table and just work around it.
That will bite them in the butt eventually. Dan, I think you wanted to say something about that.
I was just going to, I noticed in the chat there's a little bit about the minutes of care, particularly around why there isn't an EN one. So if we get a chance, could we, I'll provide a bit of background on that one as well.
Yeah, you can go for that now, Dan. The background to the RN time, the RN 24/7 and the 200 minutes of care coming in on the 1st of October and then subsequently being raised on the 1st of October in 2024 comes from the Aged Care Royal Commission, which put its recommendations in 2020. There was 148 of them. Now, the big concern for us as a national nursing and midwifery body was that enrolled nurse, there was a lot of focus on registered nurses, but enrolled nurses and carers just got lumped together. So there wasn't anywhere near the acknowledgement that we wanted of the enrolled nurse role within aged care. So it was RNs and everybody else. And I think part of the problem is that, well, it's not part of the problem. The issue is the government is responding to those recommendations from the Aged Care Royal Commission around having an RN on site 24 hours a day, about having a specific minimum amount of RN time on average per resident, a specific amount of minimum minutes of care. The only problem is that doesn't get around that problem that enrolled nurses want. Again, this is my personal opinion, but I don't think there was a recognition by the Aged Care Royal Commission
about the important role that you play in, and that's the problem. So we've got to fix that, and that's kind of what we're trying to do at the moment. So, so all the things that we're talking about tonight are designed, I guess, to in part pressure our decision makers at the federal level, because the Commonwealth regulates aged care, to come up with a solution that protects your jobs, but also grows and acknowledges the important role that ENs play in the aged care sector. So that's a little bit of the background that I didn't go into before, but that in part is some of the problem.
Rosie, you had a question?
Yeah, it's probably a bit far out maybe, but like, I love being an EN. I personally never have any intentions of becoming an RN, but the main reason for that is because it obviously, you know, takes time for the study and costs a lot of money. So if the government is, you know, expecting all these RN positions, like, are they going to start subsidising the unis for your RN, for your degree?
Good question. Dan, do you have a...
At the moment, the focus, strangely, and there's a bit of irony in this, is that it's EN positions that are being funded through TAFE. So, you know, we would like to see a national approach to that, but at the moment we've got different states doing slightly different things. But yes, there is a focus on increasing the number and subsidising, making it, you know, reducing the cost of becoming an enrolled nurse. But I haven't heard anything about subsidising RN positions specifically in Queensland at the moment. But the focus, as I said, the focus is on trying to get us more ENs, but we also have this weird situation that we're discussing tonight where we're worried about the number of ENs in the aged care sector as well.
PS, you wanted to say something?
At my work, I work at, well, they have ENs under several roles, and we have a EN that works at Med-Assist, and we have ENs like myself who works the RN role. I'm not allowed to be permanent, but the other ENs are. There's weird things like that happening, and it worries me as to, I'm in the end of my career. I've only got like maybe 5 more years to go before I'm looking at cutting down to a couple of days a week. And I have seen a lot of ENs that are in the over 60 GRAC who have been made back to PC, and that's been happening probably for the last 5-6 years. And it's very disheartening for people like myself. What are we going? Where is it going to put us who are in the last and ends of our career? We don't want to go and do another 4-year degree when we've already, like myself, I have a bachelor's degree in dementia care. I have been in the industry now for 25 years, but I am not considered to be made permanent, and yet they have other people around me that are ENs, new grads, being made permanent, but I'm not, and I've been told directly I will never be permanent. I do the RN role. I've been doing it for about the last 10 years. I'm actually very, very frightened and concerned how I'm going to finish my career off. I would love to teach PCWs about dementia, but can find no opening since I got my degree. I passionately love what I do, and it really cuts me up what's happening to us as ENs.
Yeah, no, that's awful, mate. That really is, and I think it's that, you know, what your story is, you know, a variation on a lot of the issues that we're hearing at the moment, that you're simply not valued, and you're not, regarded, that, I guess it shows you how crazy employers are sometimes, that here you are, a valuable employee with specific knowledge that it benefits the organisation considerably, yet you're experiencing these problems, plus at the, you're at the end of your career. I mean, it's just crazy stuff, isn't it? So I really do, sympathise with your position at the moment, and I guess that's why one of the reasons that we want to try and improve that for you individually and ENs as a group. So I wish I could offer you a solution straight away tonight, but it will take a little time. But hopefully, getting you, I guess, as a group, to see what we can do about this is the best way to do it, I think. Again, the power of numbers.
Exactly, which is why we've formed a branch tonight, because a branch will be very powerful in sending a message, not only to the QNMU about what you want us to advocate for, but we are to send a message to politicians, maybe to the media if we get that far. There's a lot you'll be able to do as a branch. Tina?
Yeah.
I've just got one quite a large question, really. Is how did the Royal Commission, or how did it come about that EN hours were not relevant to the 24/7 minutes? Because that's the fundamental problem we're all facing. Like, were the unions involved in that consultation?
I'll pick that one up, Kim.
Yep, thanks, Dan.
We certainly were involved, mate. Our national office was the team that dealt directly with the Aged Care Royal Commission. Me having the aged care portfolio, I was also involved in contributing to that, and they work very closely with the Royal Commission. But and we certainly advocated, because you might remember that we've had a long-standing ratios in aged care campaign, and we've been campaigning in that regard for many, many years. And one of those, the basis of our aged care campaign, was ratios in aged care. And that was based on the 2016 research that the ANMF did, which said, look, there needs to be a minimum amount of care per resident, which that research identified as 4.3 hours of care, a lot more than 200 minutes of care. And the split in staff and skill mix should be about 30% RNs, about 20% ENs, and about 50% care workers. Now, we've got this situation at the moment where care workers, unregulated care workers, and this is no criticism of them, but they're about 75% of the workforce, and the rest is the nursing component. So we certainly advocated strongly that they're the kind of staffing and skill mixes that you need to run a safe, high quality aged care service, because people in aged care these days have really, really high levels of care requirements. But, and it is the but, a Royal Commission is like the government. We can't write the legislation for a government, and we weren't, and while we tried very hard to have our ratios perspective considered by them, at the end of the day, they Royal Commissions and the commissioners who do that work are completely independent. They look at all the evidence, because the nursing ANMF wasn't the only group providing submissions to that Royal Commission. There was literally thousands of them right across the spectrum, from everything from allied health to consumer groups to aged care providers to nursing groups, you name it. So they basically sifted all through that, and that's where they came up with their recommendations. So I'd like to think that a lot of what we said to them, they took on board, and I think they did. But in this area, we've got more work to do. I hope that gives you a bit of a background to why that is the situation. I think the Royal Commission's thinking, and I can't tell you exactly what they were thinking, but what they discovered was that there simply wasn't enough RNs in the system, and that's what they focused on. But I think we as nurses understand that actually nursing is broader than that, that there's 2 levels of nursing in Australia and they work together. And I think that's the thing. I think what we're talking about tonight is that nursing component in aged care and making it as strong and as large as we can make it. So that will take a little time, but tonight is, as far as I'm concerned, in Queensland, I guess the starting point of us making that case very strongly to those people who make the decisions about these sort of things, which at the moment is the federal government. And I suppose, if anything else, we've got a more cooperative federal government than the last one, who really wasn't interested at all. I suppose, if anything, that is an advantage. At least we've got politicians in place who do listen to us. So we've got to make the argument. And as I said before, strength in numbers, the more numbers, the stronger the argument.
Because things can be changed. So those care hours, if we put enough pressure on government, there is an opportunity to put enough pressure to make them change it and actually incorporate ENs in those hours. And that's what we're hoping will come out of the survey with the ANMF. That's why they're surveying you, to find out. And hopefully out of that, there will be a bit more pressure to be put on government to actually incorporate ENs into those hours. We have no guarantees that that will happen, but that's something that we can aim for. Anne, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I did. My name is Anne Stevens. I'm an organiser for the QNMU, and I've worked looking after aged care for nearly 20 years now. For the first time in a long time, I felt quite positive about what's happening in aged care. But I have 2 things I want to highlight. The RN 24/7 care minutes information that Dan has put in the chat line. There are specific duties outlined in that for registered nurses, enrolled nurses, and personal care workers. So the government have acknowledged that there is a place for enrolled nurses, and they've got specific duties for it. The other thing I want to say is that if you're looking at further study, and one of the reasons that's holding you back is the cost, the federal government give money to the Royal College of Nursing every year, usually about September, for specific scholarships for aged care nurses. So if you're an enrolled nurse and say you're at the start of your career and you think, how am I going to work for the next 30 or 40 years? If you look at the Royal College of Nursing's website, there are specific scholarships for aged care nurses to do further study. And if you win one of those scholarships, there's enough money for you to pay for whatever course you're doing. We've had one of our blue care nurses that was actually given a scholarship to become a nurse practitioner. So there is some hope. This is the most positive I've felt about aged care for a while, but we have to band together and show as a collective that we are important and that we're strong and that we can make change. That's it.
Thank you, Anne. And there is some comments in there about not everyone wants to become an RN, and that's right. But some younger ENs would be looking at that as a long-term career pathway.
Yep.
And also the QNMU has scholarships as well. So keep an eye on our website, and we often have scholarships, and particularly for ENs that are wanting to advance their career.
But it's not just for, say, an enrolled nurse becoming a registered nurse. It's for any sort of study that you want to do that relates to aged care.
Yes.
So that means if you want to stay in the enrolled nurse, that's great, because you've got a place in the care team. But there might be courses that you would like to do that would enhance your skills, that would make you more valuable to your employer and to your residents that you look after. That can be funded by that.
Absolutely. And I myself am an enrolled nurse of 46 years now. And I still do a shift in the public sector, though. I just do one shift. But that might also show you that there is opportunity for career for enrolled nurses in the QNMU. So if you are an activist and you are active in the space, particularly once we form a branch and you think you might like to dabble your toe in becoming, we have what we call member organisers, where you come in for a period of time and you do the job and then you go back out into the workplace. And sometimes those member organisers, like myself, that's how I started. And then I've been with the QNMU now for 11 years. So there's another career opportunity that some of you might like to think about. Dan?
Yeah, the other thing I just wanted to mention too about what a branch can do, and I think this has come up a couple of times tonight, is that being an enrolled nurse for some is a stepping stone to an RN, but for a lot of ENs it's not. So I think one of the things that as a branch you could potentially consider is, well, look, what kind of career pathways would we like to see for those who want to stay in enrolled nurses, and how might they be achieved? So again, having that voice, which hasn't really, I think there used to be a national body for enrolled nurses, but I think that's pretty much faded. So you'll be kind of, cutting edge stuff here now in actually bringing that voice back, at least at the state level, as a branch. So there's lots of things that you can consider and put forward as motions at that conference, as Kim said, and it gives you the capacity to make, it's about ENs, I guess, making decisions about ENs for ENs, and I think that's a really important that's a really important thing to do, and we're happy to support that. So I think that's the other thing to consider, is that how can we develop that EN role? We've got situations at the moment, like we've got enrolled nurse advanced skills as a role within the Queensland Health Nurses and Midwives Award. The only trouble is there isn't a lot of those positions being made available, but you as a branch, because there's also enrolled nurses who work in the public sector and the private sector who could also join a branch, can start saying, well, look, why isn't this happening and what can we do about it? So there's lots of things that a branch can do and consider. So just to sort of give you some hope that you can influence the agenda on the issues that affect you.
We're going to have to wrap up because we have gone over time. Melissa, did you just have a quick question before we wrap up?
Yes, please. So it's a two-parter. So what do we do in the interim? Like, this is all very positive and everything, but what do we do in the interim? Because my work says from the 7th of August, that's when our rosters will be changing and our name will be on the PCW side of the roster. So what do we do in the interim? Do we go and work as the PCW? Because that's not, as much as I'm happy to help out and do extra shifts as PCW, that's not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
And two,
so in that case, contact your organiser, find out who your local organiser is and contact them. And that's something that we'll also discuss at the first branch meeting once we get started. But in the meantime, if they are changing your role, contact your organiser and they'll be able to give you some advice.
That's really important.
Yeah, because I don't want to take away the PCW minutes either, because they are all wanting shifts and I'm taking their shift. I don't want to do that to them either.
No, we need that spread, that 20, 30, 50 ideally is what we'd like. 20% RN, 30% EN, 50% PC. And that's our ultimate aim. So that's what we'll be working towards. I am going to have to
thank you.
Roll it up now because we have gone over time. There is a lot of questions that haven't been answered. I will try and get back to as many of you as I can, and I'll make a contact group out of everybody and keep you up to date with what's happening with the branch, and also with anything that changes or any advancements that we make, we'll make sure we let you know. Also, just personally, I look after Blue Care and we are going into negotiations with Blue Care. If there's anybody online who would like to be an EB rep for Blue Care, please send me an email because we're looking for reps. We really want you at the table when we're negotiating. So let me know if you'd like to become an EB rep and we'll have a discussion. So thank you very much, everybody. I hope we've given you a little bit of hope. I have some hope. And like Anne said, I think aged care is looking pretty good at the moment. We've got a lot of improvements in aged care. We just have to fix this EN issue. We just have to make sure we keep the skill mix and that we protect you and we make sure you're, you know, a stable part of the workforce and that you've got a voice, and you've got this opportunity for a voice now with the branch. So thank you very much, everybody. You've got my
thanks,
email
everyone.
if you want to contact me, and I will keep you all up to date, and I'll be in contact with everyone that's put their hand up to be a delegate.